everyone, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to go over week 6 and 7 as well as some of our quiz activity from last week. So week 6, hop over here, we looked at pricing as well as marketing channels and how organizations manage their marketing channels, etc. We had our kind of discussion about pricing and elasticity of demand, etc. We also had our day in the life, which will, that obviously was an Ed puzzle. I'll be able to just grab that, your grades for that or your information for that out of the Ed puzzle, so don't worry about that. That'll pop up this week. We have our written assignment and then our quiz. Obviously I haven't graded last week's written assignment yet. It was just due last evening, but one thing about written assignments, overall, and this, I think I've mentioned before, I'm teaching 4 classes right now, so each week I have a cadre of different written assignments to look at. I'd really encourage everybody to make sure you're going back and looking at feedback that I am providing on those. I'm seeing errors across the board in APA, not citing things that you're learning from external resources. Remember that even if you're not doing a direct quote, you still need to cite information. So, like for example, if you're writing an article or writing an essay or something and you're talking about these 5 marketing trends. If you're talking about the marketing trends, even though you're writing it in your own words, which is what you should be doing, you do need to cite it. So that those marketing trends did not come from your original thought, they came from that article. So just make sure you're citing things properly. I'm seeing some errors there. Also, I'd encourage you to use the grammar check and the spell check in Word or Pages or whatever it is that you're using. A fair number of colloquialisms, informal writing styles, fragmented sentence structures, those types of things. So just be aware of that. The last thing I'll mention is just the overall notion of poor paraphrasing / plagiarism. Obviously, if you've plagiarized something, you've probably heard from me. I don't think we've had anything in this class, but I have had some this term. And just be aware that when you're sharing information from an outside source, I think some students overall have learned some bad habits by taking that external source information, copying and pasting it to your paper, and flipping a few words around and calling it your own. And that is as much plagiarism as it is to just copy and paste it into your paper and leave it. You need to read information, learn the information that you're reading about, and then write it in your own words, and then cite it. That is proper writing style. I'm seeing a lot of issues with that, so just be aware. As you move forward in your program, as you obviously many of you are at the point where you are writing your undergraduate thesis, just be aware it's a huge problem we're seeing across the university. It's certainly not limited to the HSA program, and we need to encourage people, especially if you are thinking to go on to graduate school. Nearly every word you write in graduate school is going to be cited. Very rarely our grad class is interested in your opinion on something. We try and do a fair mix of it here in the undergrad setting, but much of your work at the graduate level would be research paper type activity, which all needs to be cited. So just be aware of that. Like I said, you'll look at your feedback, see the comments in there. It'll explain, where I have concerns, etc. So this week we're going to talk about kind of the whole. Once you've created your plan, now you're looking to communicate with the public. So marketing communications, what pieces are there within marketing communications plans, what is the role of ethics in marketing communication, those types of things. So that's kind of our topic for the week. It's pretty broad. For the discussion this week, we're going to talk about ethics in the healthcare sector with regard to marketing overall, and some of the challenges. Think back to the fact that, for as recent as the 80s, which probably doesn't seem very recent to many of you, but I was in high school in the 80s, so it seems pretty recent to me. As recent as the 80s, the late 80s, I was in high school. There were no healthcare marketing anything. There was no marketing in healthcare. Physicians found it to be unethical. So, what a shift has occurred in the past 30 years, and or 40 years now. 40 years? No, that's not possible. 30 years. Well, 30 to 40 years, depending on what part of the 80s. In the shift to now where we're marketed constantly from healthcare overall. Your final project is due this week. For your final project, I have had a couple questions about APA. Feel free to break your paper up using headings based on what's in the template. But if you're sharing information that's coming from an outside source, for example, in your market analysis, you're probably going to be talking about mission, vision, and values. If you're taking that information from the website of the organization that you are writing for, you need to cite that. So a lot of this document will probably be your own thoughts, your own words, your own stuff. But if you are sharing information from an external source, please make sure you're using APA style with your references and citations. So this is just a general bit of information about the project. You will submit it down here. It's a Turnitin paper. So unfortunately, I can't do all of this information. I can't break it down like that in the Turnitin instructions. So that's why that's there like that. We have the quiz and we have the ed puzzle. So let's hop over to our slides for this week. So HSAM 4800, that's you guys. First question, marketers need to focus less on the side of the value network that looks toward the customer. So traditionally, we have focused solely on the value network that looks toward the customer. But what we're seeing now, and I think it's chapter 12 maybe? I think it's chapter 12, and the textbook talks about it, that we're seeing a push to look more at kind of a B2B marketing or becoming a network manager, managing your network overall, and as opposed to just focusing on the side of the value network that is looking toward the customer, like proving to the customer that there is a great deal of value in your product. There needs to be a shift, and the text does talk about that. And there's actually kind of a neat case study about Tufts New England Medical Center and their value network that kind of demonstrates this point. So marketers need to focus less on the side of the value network that looks toward the customer. That is true. Next one, it is legal to set artificially high regular prices and then announce a sale at prices close to previous everyday prices. So this is false. It is illegal to do so. That's a bait and switch. So, or similar to the bait and switch, where you're like, hey, this stuff normally costs, let's say the item costs $25, but then they bump the price up to $50 and say it's a half off sale, and they sell it to you for $25. That's illegal. You can't do that. So it's it's important. That's why you'll see many types of organizations like Walmart and Target, big box store kind of places that don't have a lot of sales. They have a lot of kind of everyday value type pricing. They have sales, especially around the holidays and whatnot, but their focus is more on everyday low prices, as opposed to a situation like this. Like I said, Macy's is a store where I've always thought that they do this. I'm sure that they don't, but just because it's so well governed. But Macy's is a store where it just seems like I'll go in and look for something, and everything is normally twice as much as I would expect it to be, but it's like half off. So it makes you think you're getting a deal when you're probably not. Now I know that they legally they can't do that, but there are a lot of stores that kind of make it feel like that some of the time. We see that in the automobile industry, but we also see that in the pharmaceutical industry, and this is why it's important that we monitor these types of things. So the answer here is false. It is not legal to set artificially high prices and then announce sale at regular prices down the road. Next one. In healthcare services and products, demand and price are inversely related. So this answer is false. Normally, demand and price are inversely related. So typically, if there's something that has a very high price, the demand is probably less. Like for example, I'm trying to think of an easy retail product. Like when you think about vehicles like a Lexus or a Jaguar or a Maserati or a Ferrari, they're very, very expensive, but the demand isn't as high for them. So if people have the money to buy them, they'll buy them. If they don't, they don't. The demand is not as high as it is for other products that are more reasonable in price that the majority of people in the country could afford. This is where healthcare, so normally in the normal market, demand and price are inversely related. High demand, lower price, low demand, higher price is typically how that works. In healthcare, that is not the case. And we've actually kind of talked about this through this class. Like there are some folks that will choose to go to a higher priced healthcare entity, and there will be greater demand because there is a notion that when you're paying more, you're receiving better value, or not necessarily better value, but better quality. So higher price may equal better quality. As we've talked about in this class previously, that's not necessarily the case. High price does not equal better quality in every instance. So it's really important for folks that are thinking to go to someplace that costs more, make sure that it's actually worth that extra money to go there. A lot of times, like I'm sure that you guys have heard the story of the MRI. I've once had an MRI in the town where I lived. Went to New York City because I was having issues within my knee. Went to New York City, had another MRI, and it really showed different results because of the skill of the technician, the level of the machine. It was a more higher quality MRI machine, and the skill of the radiologist. So, but I paid a lot more for that one because I paid a percentage of it. So, so sometimes it's, you know, that higher price can bring a greater demand because people will flock to that place to receive that care because they see it as being a higher quality. So demand and price are not inversely related in the healthcare sector. Effective marketing channel will remain effective over the whole product life cycle. That's not necessarily the case. The product life cycle, obviously you start out at that birth point all the way through the death point. And what is effective from a marketing channel perspective at the beginning may not be effective towards the end of the life of that product. So, you constantly need to be revising your marketing, examining your products, seeing where they are in the life cycle, and updating your marketing as you move. So it will remain effective over the whole product life cycle. That is false. Next question. In healthcare services and products, sales are not sensitive to price reductions. So interestingly, especially given what we were just talking about demand and pricing, this answer is false. There are it talks about it in the textbook in that chapter, between 15 and 35% of people in most categories are price sensitive, even in the healthcare sector. So, and it's probably it is typically related to folks that have high deductible health plans or are paying more of their healthcare, or that are self-pay. So, so price reductions can impact the healthcare, sales sector, how many products we're selling or how many services we're selling. They can be sensitive to price reduction. Are they as sensitive to price reduction as the healthcare or as the retail sector? No. People aren't going to be flocking to the doctor just because they're charging a little less. But the notion of price transparency in healthcare is becoming incredibly important so that people are aware of how much they're going to have to pay in the end. I think that's the last one. Yes. So, so that's all I've got for this week. Any questions as you begin to work on your final project or on anything else, please let me know. And otherwise, thanks, and I'll see everyone in the classroom. Thanks.